The uncomfortable truth is that Donald Trump left America exposed and vulnerable to this pandemic. He ignored the warnings of health experts and intelligence agencies and put his trust in China's leaders instead. And now we're all paying the price. Let's take a look at how we got here. President Obama and I oversaw the launch of a program literally called PREDICT. It gave us early warnings for outbreaks in China and around the world of this kind of disease. President Trump eliminated that program. We had a strong CDC presence in Beijing to sound the alarm when necessary. President Trump cut the number of CD staff in China by more than 2/3. We had an American official stationed inside the Chinese Disease Control Agency, serving as our eyes and ears. President Trump left that position vacant as the outbreak hit. And when the coronavirus started to spread, the CDC wanted to get into China to get information that could save American lives. China said no, and Donald Trump didn't insist on access. Instead, he actively praised the Chinese for, quote, its transparency, end of quote, and he tweeted his thanks to President Xi, quote, on behalf of the American people. He was more worried about protecting his trade deal with China than he was about the virus that had already come to America. So in February, on the same day I was calling on the administration to demand CDC access, President Trump was applauding Xi Jinping for his work on the coronavirus. That's not being tough on China.
President Trump is trying hard to revise history, again, but the facts don't back him up. Let's talk about President Trump, China, and the coronavirus, and how President Trump failed to hold China to account when it mattered most. Barack Obama and Joe Biden put in place extra safeguards to predict, prevent, and deal with pandemics, especially those originating in China. We kept a strong CDC presence on the ground there. We even had an American expert stationed in the Chinese Disease Control Agency to be our eyes and our ears. President Trump dismantled or diminished virtually all of it. He closed the White House Pandemic Office. He cut the number of CDC experts in China from 47 to 14. He left that key position that was our eyes and ears vacant in the months before the outbreak. In early January, after the outbreak started, the CDC wanted to get into China to get information to protect Americans. China said no, and President Trump didn't push. Why not? Because he was so focused on getting a deal with China to fix his costly trade war. As the virus was spreading and the warning signs were flashing red, and intelligence reports were raising the alarm, President Trump was signing and celebrating a trade deal with China. This was the time to get tough with China, to demand access and information that could help us stop the spread. But President Trump didn't insist because he didn't want to put his trade deal at risk. In fact, as things were getting worse in China, and as China was keeping the door shut to our experts, President Trump embraced Chinese leaders, praising their efforts and transparency. On January 22nd, 2 days after the first case of COVID-19 is confirmed in the United States, President Trump says he has, quote, a great relationship with President Xi, and they, quote, just signed probably the biggest deal ever made, end quote.
You trust that we're going to know everything we need to know from China?
I do. I have a great relationship with President Xi.
On January 24, President Trump praises China again. The same day, the second case in the United States is confirmed.
I think President Xi is working very, very hard. I spoke to him.
But then, turning on a dime, President Trump tries to rewrite history. He starts to blame China for the pandemic. He insists he got tough because he imposed a travel ban, but it was too little too late. More than 40 countries imposed travel restrictions before we did, and tens of thousands of people still came in from China because it wasn't a real ban. Did anyone see this differently? Joe Biden did. On the very same day, as President Trump was saying this,
I spoke with President Xi. We had a great talk. He's working very hard, I have to say. He's working very, very hard.
Biden was saying,
I'd insist that China allow our scientists in to make a hard determination of how it started, where it's from, how far along it is.
So now what? Let's talk about that and what a real leader like Joe Biden would do as president. He'd put CDC officials back in China rather than trusting Beijing with the health and safety of the American people. And he'd use our influence at the World Health Organization to demand real accountability and oversight. President Trump went soft on China when it mattered most. Joe Biden will insist that China live up to its responsibilities. We need a president who can meet this difficult moment and others that will come with strength. We need Joe Biden.